Oh, I'll say that's close enough. Welcome to the Not Chillin' and Duffy recap for UFC 281, Adesanya versus Pereira. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. Do not adjust your screens. With Keith Chillin on the ground in New York City tonight, taking everything in from cage side, or at least from the media room. We recruited the help of our good friend, Mr. Dev Goes Fishing, Devin Vasquez. How you doing, Dev?
I'm doing great. You know what they say, when the cat is away, the mice come to play. And in this moment, Keith is the cat, and I guess we're the mice. But we probably had a better view.
Yeah, I would guess so. And he got a bunch of interesting backstage post-fight interviews. I'll be recording the UFC Vegas 65 preview with him tomorrow, and I can't wait to hear some of his stories. I'm sure they'll show up in the actual show. Well, going into the main event, we already had a lot to talk about. We had set the UFC record for first-round finishes, and then we'd also had some fifth-round finishes, some slightly controversial scorecards, just a generally wild night of wild behavior, and UFC 281 saved the wildest for last. How did you have the fight scored before how'd you have it going into the fifth round?
So I texted you this, and I know you saw it. But for the airwaves, I had a 2-2 going into the fifth, only because at the end of the fourth round, Pereira landed a good solid left hook, and then right at the very end of the round, there was just the most impactful combination. And how I feel a fight should be scored is going to be a little bit different than the actual scoring criteria. They base it off impact. So I had it going. I had it tied up. I was surprised with Izzy's wrestling, but at the same time, he comes from a good camp. And, if I can curse on here, the only thing I can say is fuck.
Oh,
that was crazy.
Please, you can swear all you want on this show. Keith tries to watch it. He's more of a gentleman than I am. He's a family man. Well, I'm a family man, but my kids are grown and they swear too. Yeah, I mean, I had it 3-1 for Adesanya. I don't hate the 2-2 necessarily, but it was all rendered moot in a moment when Pereira, tired, flagging. I mean, he seemed to be all out of steam, rocked Adesanya with, I want to say it was his trademark left that started the damage. Let me remind myself here. Yeah, and then just pours it on. Goddard jumps in to stop the fight. The chat was going off on the stoppage, but like for and against it, long before we even went live. It was obviously
people have a problem with it.
A few, but it looks like the majority of people were majority of people thought it was a fine stoppage.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be one of the ones that is I'm going to be in the minority here. I don't love the stoppage. And I said this last week because we had a main event standing TKO stoppage last week in Lemos versus Rodriguez, and I said I'm always really leery of those. This isn't boxing or kickboxing. Like, even going to the ground is a viable option. So as long as the person's standing, I'm always suspicious of them. And this one to me looked especially bad because the stoppage came off of like one semi-solid punch on the end of like 4 slipped punches. You can't say a guy isn't intelligently defending himself if he slipped like 3 or 4 punches in a row.
The definition between TKO and KO is unintelligent. You can't defend yourself. You have no ability to do so. Unintelligent defense, done. TKO is when you stop intelligently defending yourself, but you still have the ability to defend yourself. It's definitely a gray area. So the thing is, like, if you're a real Izzy fan, Alex Pereira, his punching power, the sport. What's the point of letting it go on any further? Because 3 or 4 shots from Pereira, 3 or 4 more, especially the way it looked like it was going, that could take 2 years off, Izzy's career. And if you really like Izzy, then you should just be okay with it and say, live to fight another day. If you lost money on it, then obviously you're upset with it. I agree with you too. Like, if you can let him go out on a shield. Like, he's there to fight. But I feel like the more I watch the sport, and I've been watching this for too long, I'm starting to be more okay with these like early stoppages. Like, I just stopped caring about them because I'd rather just see people that are getting paid $50,000 fight a longer career.
Sure. Having said that, these guys had a lot more at stake than $50,000.
Yeah, he's making a lot of bread.
Yeah. An interesting question came up in the chat earlier, and it's too late for me to scroll up and see who it was. Please take credit if you're the one who said it, or asked it. This finish, more or less shocking than Edwards versus Usman?
No, not at all.
Less shocking?
Yeah, far less shocking, because even through this whole fight, you could tell when Pereira would touch, you could hear the impact from the shots, and you could see the bewilderment on Izzy's face when he was getting touched. He was brave in this fight because I do feel like Izzy has been a little bit of, I don't want to use the word fearful of big power punchers, but you could definitely say he's more wary. And in this fight, he fought brave. Like, this was a brave performance from Izzy. If you were an Izzy hater, and I'm on the line of that, this was a brave performance by him. Someone like Pereira to stay in there, to strike with him. He did use his grappling, but Izzy fought a brave performance, and Pereira just has the kiss of Dutch, like the kiss of death, man. He touches you, you're dead. Like, what do you can't be really mad about it.
No, and I'm not mad about that at all. And it didn't pan out right for Adesanya, obviously.
Yeah.
But you can't judge things like this strictly on the results. This is simply too chaotic a sport. This is two well-trained athletes hitting too hard and gloves that are too small. But having said that, despite the fact that it didn't go their way, I absolutely love the game plan that Eugene Behrman and City Kickboxing came up with for Adesanya in this fight.
Great.
I mean, well, you mentioned that he did some wrestling, but it wasn't panic wrestling. It wasn't wrestling like,
no,
I don't like what I'm getting on the feet, I'm going to shoot. It's in the middle rounds, we are going to take this guy down and make him tired wrestling. And it worked until it didn't. Sensational. I don't have individual rooting interest for fighters at this point.
Sure.
I deal with too many of them professionally, and I'm just rooting for great fights. I do like to see greatness. So, if there's a champ on a really great dominant streak, there's part of me that likes to see it go on because, I do want to see greatness, but I also like the chaos. If I didn't like the chaos, I'd watch a less volatile sport. Great. I mean, credit to Pereira here because by body language, he looked beaten. He looked physically exhausted. And between rounds, the way Glover Teixeira and the rest of his coaches were talking to him, it sounded like the pep talk that you hear corners give to a fighter who is folding mentally. And that turned out either that was not the case or the pep talk worked in a way they almost never do, because as tired as Pereira looked, like you said, he has the death touch. All the UFC promos you've ever heard where one fighter goes, I only have to touch his chin once. I remember when they told me that shit about, Dan Hardy and George St. Pierre. But it's true of Pereira, and he had the wherewithal, as tired as he was, I'm sure frustrated as he was, he had the wherewithal to know what his chance to win would require him to do, and he was out there throwing effective offense in the fourth and fifth rounds. I mean, dude, what a hell of a fight. I'm at risk for just rambling here. Alan McDonald, what's up, Alan? Welcome. Said, it sounded like the pep talk that Leon Edwards' corner gave to him before the fifth round against Usman. I agree, and that sounded like a bullshit pep talk too. And then Edwards comes out and just unleashes the beautiful, untelegraphed, clean head kick. Okay, so I'm gonna admit here that I had already typed up what I thought should be next for Adesanya and what should be next for Pereira on the assumption that Adesanya was going to go ahead and win this decision. I didn't backspace over it. I left my shame on the text document, to show me forever. Same way I did in the first Nunes versus Pena fight. Given that we are talking about one of the most dominant champs in the UFC, if not just being dethroned, and if not controversy, since I seem to be very much in the minority here, a stoppage that at least wasn't smelling salts definitive. That Adesanya is going to be willing to say it was too early. That they can show, like black and white grainy footage of the stoppage, with Pereira or with Adesanya standing up and going like this as soon as is this all building towards one of the few good immediate title rematches? Is that what you do next?
Unless Robert Whittaker kills Paulo Costa.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that. In the chat, tell us what you think should be next for Adesanya and Pereira.
Because, Pereira's got 3 wins over him. And clearly it shows no matter what's going to happen, it looks like Alex has got this guy's number. And there's so many routes to victory for Izzy. And you watch the footage. You can watch from number 1 to number 3. You can start at the very first fight, very first round, and watch it through. And you can see Izzy's success. Technically, Izzy has longer gaps of success, but it just shows that it doesn't matter. That the longer, and a lot of people were saying pre-fight, I've taken a lot of other MMA media, listened to breakdowns and stuff, and a lot of people were saying that the longer this fight goes, the worse it goes for Izzy, and I had the exact opposite opinion. I thought the longer Alex Pereira just hangs around, the longer Izzy lets him hang around, the worse it's going to be for him. But in the same sense, you can't overextend and try to get him out there, because you're going to get the same result just quicker. I think striking with Alex Pereira, unless you kill him quickly, because it's shown that Izzy can touch him. Maybe someone with more power than Izzy can touch him. Maybe less technical, but more power can touch Pereira. But man, if you just let him hang around, he's just got too much. He's too potent. You just can't let him hang around.
I agree with you on principle, because normally the principle is a longer fight favors the more dynamic finisher, because they just have that much more time to do whatever it is they do, whether it's a back take, rear naked choke specialist, or just somebody with the death touch. We're having another Derek Lewis fight next week. I thought it would be less the case here, just because Pereira's gas tank was such a question mark, but gas tank be damned, he did the thing. I am normally as skeptical of instant title rematches as they come. Unless there was overt controversy, even if a great champ is dethroned, I like to build the narrative, build the hype for the rematch. Don't burn what could be a very cool part of the story of your division in 6 months just to have something to do. The UFC has killed some potentially great rivalries that way. Because, I mean, the most obvious example to me is Dillashaw Garbrandt, where, a fight or two in between, let Dillashaw continue to build his GOAT resume in that division. Let Garbrandt get some confidence back as a guy who just so clearly runs on confidence. Here, it's one of the few times where I'm like, I'm not mad if they run this one back right away.
Yeah.
Having said that, Whittaker, man, Whittaker is a very, very good wrestler. I'm sure Whittaker watched this fight and was like, oh, if Izzy can take this guy down and rack up 3.5 minutes of top time on him, I'd be a nightmare for him. The question there for me is the size differential too much in that case?
If you don't take Pereira down in the very first exchange in the grappling and submit him or pound him out in that first exchange, then the next round is going to start and you're stuck back on your feet. And someone like Robert Whittaker, Pereira can knock him out with a jab. I hate to say it, but I mean, if Robert Whittaker is getting hurt in every one of his fights against the power punchers of the current welterweight division, not including Alex Pereira, I mean, if he touches someone like Robert Whittaker, I think he's going to hurt him bad. And there is path to victory, but I just think Pereira is one of those guys. And I'm not a Pereira fan. I was never even a Pereira fan going into this. But watching this fight shows me that he knows what to do to just hang around. And he's proficient enough in the striking. And he's just so damn vicious with so much power that, you're going to have to – either you have to get him out of there – just have to kind of get him out of there right away. someone like a Khamzat Chimaev would probably be the hardest fight for Alex Pereira. Someone that is just all horsepower, go and get the takedown and hunting submissions. That's what I think we have to do to beat him.
And there's a name up on your screen right now. I mean, again, when we thought that Adesanya was on his way at least to winning a pretty straightforward decision, my two options for him were either, okay, you wait on the winner of Prohaska and Teixeira if you want to go try it 205 again, because I think Adesanya would have matched up better against either of them than he did against Blachowicz. Maybe give it another shot. Or, I mean, Andre Muniz is like, Adesanya has cleaned out the 185-pound like top 15 to the point that Muniz is like the highest ranked guy that he had not already beaten.
Yeah.
Having said that, like a guy that has some physical horsepower. I mean, Muniz is a hoss and is a sensational like grappler. Like, how do you like him against?
I don't think he has the same takedown game as someone like Khamzat, and I don't think he has the same, it showed in his fight with Uriah Hall that Uriah Hall was able to just kind of hang around with him in the grappling and scramble through things and fight off submissions. I do think Muniz could beat someone like Poatan, because if he, in one grappling exchange, if it looks something like the Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier fight, the ending sequence to that fight, it's over. He's going to, squeeze his head off or rip his arm off. Anyone with that high level, anyone, in the sport where there's that much of a discrepancy in skill levels between martial arts, has an opportunity to win. Look at Khabib, I think Muniz could be a challenge for either one of those guys. I think Muniz could beat either one of them, and I think it could be a 50-50 fight.
One problem with an immediate rematch is, one cool thing that has come out of this is that Pereira doesn't have the Adesanya problem. He's fought basically nobody. He has fought one ranked guy, and the champ. He fought Strickland. If they decide, hey, let's give Pereira another fight, but let's not ruin this rematch. Let's give him somebody that's likely to strike with him. I mean, there's such a wealth of options out there.
Yeah.
I do not know what to do next year. Like I'm uncomfortable finding myself in the position of arguing for an immediate rematch.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go back to what Bobby Boucher said about the 20 seconds sooner in the end of the first round it was going to be over. That's the same way that the second kickboxing match went. Standing 8 count, and then he came back and murdered him. Yep. It's just that if you aren't putting that guy out right away, as far as matchmaking goes moving forward for Pereira, if I was someone like Khamzat, I would try to go get a fight at middleweight ASAP. But I think it would be fun to watch him fight. I would like to watch him fight Robert Whittaker, and I mean, Robert Whittaker deserves it. If he were to go out there and beat Paulo Costa, in my eyes, he hasn't lost to Alex Pereira 3 times. He didn't just get knocked out by Alex Pereira. Izzy can come back and fight him. If Pereira beats Whittaker, Izzy can fight him for a 4th time, and Izzy can go get a win or just chill. And honestly, Izzy can just chill. He doesn't need to go get a win. He can just chill.
Now, and that's the other thing about Izzy. He doesn't like to chill. He is a busy fighter. They popped off an incredible stat. You've watched enough of the shows. You've been on enough of the shows to know that I usually watch UFC events with the sound off. And It's not because I'm too cool for school. It's because I'm too susceptible to being swayed by what they say. But I left it on for this one just because, Rogan and DC are comedy gold sometimes, and unintentional comedy gold. But they mentioned that, okay, there are 12 weight classes in the UFC, right? 12 weight classes, or 11 or 12. Israel Adesanya has been in 20% of the UFC's title fights since he won the title. He's accounting for more than double his share of title fights. He is not.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, and there are a couple reasons. With recent present company accepted, he doesn't get hit cleanly very often, and he doesn't have much of a weight cut. So he's I can in 3 months guy. Because there's not a mark on his face. He walks around in 190 pounds. Yeah.
And look who he's fighting. And let's be very honest. Middleweight is the worst men's division besides heavyweight.
Yeah,
it's got to be. I mean,
I
it's got to
agree,
be.
but it has some new blood coming up. Light heavyweight is not great either. But yeah,
they're third. I think they're third.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one is very tough on what to do with these guys next. I think, just like you said, Izzy is, taking up 20% of the title fights. But even if he doesn't fight Pereira next, like, he could still be a main event on a fight night, and that gets him paid. But the UFC would probably want him. Do you really see Izzy not fighting for a title in his next fight? I just don't see it. I think he's just going to chill. I think he's finally going to chill. He was talking about getting like movie role offers that he shut down before this. I think he might just go F off and go do something like that, make his money there. And then he can come back and, follow up in 2023 and in a year from now.
And probably step in and get an immediate title
shot,
since,
against
as
whoever.
You mentioned, the cupboard is pretty bare at 185. Any other thoughts? I want to make sure that we give this main event enough shine, but I thought it was a pretty straightforward fight right up until the end, and then we just had a shocking outcome. Incredible job by the challenger, incredible display of just heart and perseverance, and I'm the odd man out on thinking there's anything wrong with the stoppage. So yeah, it was a great fight that ended shockingly. Any other thoughts on it?
Even if Izzy would have won here, what would his next step have been? Going to light heavyweight? Because if that's the case, I don't like any fights against those guys up there for him in the top 5.
I wouldn't favor him against either guy, but I like his chances against Prochazka or Teixeira better than against Blachowicz. Prochazka is wild and gets tagged in every fight. Teixeira,
Glover's his worst matchup in my eyes, because if Jon takes him down, if Jan Blachowicz took Izzy down and had any form of top control, Glover's ground and pound is so bad. Look what he did to Anthony Smith. He would just bounce Izzy's head off the ground.
I agree, but that's after he got taken to the woodshed in the first round. What Smith did to Teixeira in the first round, I think Izzy finishes that fight. And that's 2 years ago. Teixeira's now 43. He's gotten by on his chin and his gas tank for so long, and
power. And he has power.
And power.
Power.
And he has power. But
Blachowicz is always a bad fight. I think just the checking of the leg kicks. I think Blachowicz is the best leg kick checker in the UFC. His checking game, it just shuts down Izzy. And if we're talking about Jan Blachowicz, the only thing I want to say is Joe Rogan, Izzy did not outstrike Jan Blachowicz in the first 3 rounds of that fight.
No,
and it makes me sick to hear that.
It made me regret turning the sound on.
It disgusts me.
No,
it
just did not style on Blachowicz at all. In fact,
no,
Blachowicz landed cleanly on Adesanya more than almost any of his other opponents. Just the people that until tonight had landed cleanly on Adesanya were people that had the threat of the takedown. Gastelum, Whitaker in the second fight, and Blachowicz. That's traditionally has been the way to find some holes in the otherwise impregnable defense of Israel Adesanya.
Backing him up to the cage. I think that may be something new that people are going to see here, that you can force him. If you're throwing big combos at him, he's going to sit and roll on the cage, but at least that takes out lateral movement if he can only move left and right, and then you can unload combos, go to the body. Pereira had a lot of success going to the body too. And he seems made of brick. Izzy was hitting him with body kicks that would have hurt anyone else.
Yeah.
And he was unfazed. That was strange.
The scary thing is that Pereira, at this point, obviously he's probably going to stick with this for a while. He has room for improvement. He had kickboxer transitioning to MMA problems in the cage tonight. He was so frustrated by Adesanya's hand fighting.
Yeah.
Because that's something you simply can't do with kickboxing gloves. But Adesanya
100%.
actually, grabbing and messing with his hands frustrated him to no end. While he did end up backing Izzy into the cage a few times, working in an enclosure that is effectively round. I mean, I know it has 8 sides, but in terms of trying to cut off the enclosure and catch people and stop their lateral movement, it might as well be round. He's a guy that has spent most of his fighting career in square enclosures. It's something that like Crow Cop never really fixed once he got to the UFC. He had been used to being able to back people into corners, and I mean that's where he got a lot of his nastiest kills. Like Pereira has things he could work on and be an even better MMA striker going forward, and he just lit up somebody that Keith believes is the best striker in MMA history, and I think is at least in the top 3. Like that's another scary thing to think about. He could be better at striking in MMA than he is right now in 2 more fights.
I think he really needs to take a good look at his weight cut too, because I feel like there was some shots that I've seen him take. I was telling my friend, and he was kind of crapping on me a little bit when I told him that Bruno Silva is a harder puncher than Israel. Okay. And there were shots that Izzy landed on Pereira that were clean shots, but right at the end of that second round, like that shot that hurt him and wobbled him, like it was a very perfectly timed shot. Those are the ones that hurt you, very precise. But like I've seen Pereira eat shots better. I've seen him eat harder shots in other fights. And I think this tough weight cut may have something to do with his durability. So you might need to look at that. But I also agree with you, man. If he's getting better, like this is his 7th, what is this, or 8th MMA fight? He was 6-1.
Yep, he was 6-1 coming into this.
It's like Brock Lesnar vibes, man.
I mean, it's not quite Brock Lesnar, but it's on that same level. Okay, well here's another hypothetical for you. Suppose Prohaska just decimates Teixeira, like sits Seiza in the middle of the octagon and lets off some like weird mystical samurai in the forest promo and calls out Alex.
I think Alex to avenge. This is what I was saying this when this fight got made. I was like, what a crazy storyline. I know Keith. If Keith hears this, he's gonna love this. He loves storylines. Imagine it. Just like you said, he crucifies him. Kills Glover, and then he says, "You know what? You're a big guy. Move up. Come avenge your brother. Come avenge your best friend and your mentor and your coach. This guy gave you a house. I'll take it from you." And but I think, why couldn't he just go up there and beat Yuri in his next fight?
Yeah, I mean, the UFC has options that it did not have half an hour ago. That's something for sure. Let's move on from this one.
Yeah.
I mean, we had another title fight tonight. The outcome not quite as shocking to most, where Weili Zhang joined the ranks of 2-time UFC strawweight champs, tapping out Carla Esparza in the second round. Zhang was heavily favored in this. She was like -400. The majority of observers that I saw thought it could have been Valentina Shevchenko odds. I saw people saying this might as well be -1,000 or -1,200. I kind of agree, just because while Esparza is a very good fighter, the things she does best just line up so badly with the things with like Zhang's strengths and her vulnerabilities. Because Zhang has vulnerabilities, obviously. She's been beaten multiple times, but Esparza wasn't going to light her up with like one beautiful picture perfect leg kick.
No.
While she is a very persistent, like dogged takedown artist, she has just nothing resembling the horsepower of Zhang. The thing that shocked me, well, it didn't shock me again because I expected Zhang would destroy her, was how confident Zhang was. Like, Zhang gave not a solitary fuck about Carla Esparza's wrestling. Like, I mean, she was throwing tons of kicks. People who were afraid of getting taken down don't throw kicks. They especially don't throw kicks to the body. They don't throw kicks up top. And when Esparza shot takedowns on her, she was doing like the 2007 BJ Penn thing, just hopping on one foot and punching her. Like, no respect whatsoever for the takedown like game. Like,
that's how you beat Carla Esparza. Like, if you have horsepower, you just go step on the gas and just go run her over. And that's what Weili did. I texted you this, and I think it is a good comparison. But after tonight, I think Weili is like super similar to Michael Chandler. Just, good BJJ, good wrestling, good offensive striking, poor defensive striking, good submissions, good BJJ, but just all freaking horsepower. Like when she just stepped on the gas on Carla, she just had no respect for her. She, you're not going to beat me in any grappling exchange. You may scramble with me, but I'm just going to stand up. Just like you said, she just like, there's just nothing Carla could do. She was too small, too weak. There was no way she was going to earn Weili's respect in this fight. There's nothing Carla Esparza could have done.
I put a comment by RC Kim up on here. Hey, what up, RC? Always good to have you on the show. Because as he points out, it wasn't even a proper position to go for the rear naked choke, but it's evidence of the extent to which Zhang was toying with her, because she went for that exact same position the last time Esparza tried to take her down. She clearly wanted the weird pseudo crucifix rear naked choke, like side naked choke. Like she went for that exact same position the time before. So I guess that's how they drew it up in the gym for her. But yeah, it wasn't a proper position, but once she locked that up, you could see the panic in Esparza's eyes. I mean, I don't know to what extent you've trained, but if you've been choked either by a guillotine or a rear naked choke, there are multiple different reactions. There's the, oh, this is a wind choke, I can't breathe, and there's that panic look. Yeah, there's the, it's a blood choke, and if you're green, you may not even know what's happening until you're out.
You're done.
And then there's the, oh, this isn't really, it's not going to relieve me of consciousness. It just hurts like shit.
It's going to rip my head off.
Yeah, it's going to rip my head off. Like some of them are like half a face crank, and you end up turning to a position where you can get choked just because it hurts so bad. This looked like that into a wind choke, because like you could see Esparza's eyes just go like this and tap, tap, tap. Brutal, just savage stuff from Weili Zhang. Next up for these, like, I mean, I know that you watched the previews. I'm gonna rope you into doom one of them one of these days.
Sure.
It's been the 5-woman round robin for the entire 8.5 year lifespan of the division. This was one of the last combinations they had not yet made, especially since Andrade is probably going to fight again at 125 next. The next person to fight is not going to be a former champ, probably. Do you agree that it should be Amanda Lemos, who won last week?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that took you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's... And I'll tell you what, that might be a bad fight for Zhang Weili.
Tell me your thoughts. And in the chat, I see like a bunch of you have already sounded off saying, yeah, Lemos should be next. Tell me how you think they match up in the chat. I'll put some of these up or read them off. Like, let us know what you think of that. But yeah, like, explain.
Lemos is bigger. She's faster. I think she hits harder. She has a longer reach. She's got even faster hands than Zhang Weili, which is something to say. Just as strong, just as much horsepower. Is also a good wrestler. And Zhang Weili has shown that she can be hurt in fights. She hung with Joanna, but Lemos has not taken nearly the amount of damage. And Zhang has no head movement. She gets clipped by Lemos. Anyone that gets clipped by Lemos, that finishing sequence on Marina Rodriguez, like those are shot, like that's different. Like those, like that is not the average 115-pound woman MMA fighter on pro level. Like that was different. That's different power.
How much in your mind does it factor in that we know for a fact that Zhang can fight at a torrid pace for 5 rounds? Even though she's built like a tank, even though she probably has a substantial...
It's a big factor. It is a big factor. Because she is all horsepower, and she can beat all horsepower for 5 rounds. Her problems that are going to arise with her in the future are just her striking defense deficiencies. I think that's her number one problem, because there's even moments in this fight where Carla had landed some shots that, like, someone like Weili shouldn't be getting hit with shots like that from someone like Carla Esparza.
Chris Wiz asks, Ben, who are the other 2 fighters shorter than Esparza? The only other fighters in the UFC that are shorter than Carla Esparza are Ilir Latifi and Chris Barnett.
Can I guess?
Sure, absolutely. Go for it.
Is it Brianna Van Buren?
Van Buren is shorter than her, but is she in the UFC?
Not any
Or I
longer.
don't know. I guess Chris wasn't even asking that. If we're just talking about fighters shorter than Esparza, I mean,
Calarte, the guy over in one, the little short Cuban guy.
he definitely is. False. Hasbulla is 6'7". It is trick photography.
Hasbulla.
What's her name? The Invicta atomweight, now strawweight, who popped for weed. Alicia Zappatella. Zappatella is she's under 5 feet tall, and what's her name that choked out Michelle Watterson all those years ago? I can't remember her name. Little Brazilian lady. They're both under 5 feet tall. Vanessa Demopoulos is 5'1". Yeah. Vanessa Demopoulos, it varies. Like how tall the clear heels are, you know? Like how tall them stripper heels are. Yeah.
Logbuni is even Loma Logbuni is very short too.
Loma is she's average Thai. Like
yeah. Yeah.
Erica Tiburcio, Alan McDonald. Remind me, Alan, that you are my listener of the week. I can hand it out already. Yeah, Erica Tiburcio. Thank you. I much else to say about this. It sounds like we know what's next. It sounds like a good fight.
Yeah.
I'm glad that either Lemos or Rodriguez is going to get their chance now because, yeah, I like that. The people's main event, Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. I mean, by the time those guys stepped in the cage, we had already had a round of the year candidate on this show. And these two gentlemen were like, well, fuck that prelim, guys.
Yeah.
I appeared on MMA Fighting's game show, contest show, Between the Links this past week against what's his bucket that I've taken on twice there. I lost this time. I totally know the guy. Why can't I'm so bad at names, dude. Like better living through chemistry in my 20s, bad living in my 40s with the after effects. Anyway, he espoused the opinion that Chandler and Poirier are both kind of shot. And I don't know if I completely agree, but in my breakdown of the fight, where I said that it's probably going to come down to the fact that Chandler can't take as much punishment as Poirier anymore, I'm like, I sound like I'm talking about a shot fighter. Maybe he's right. I don't know. What'd you think of the fight? What'd you think of that Bananas first round?
Chandler just is, like Zhang Weili, all horsepower, terrible striking defense. He will line someone up on the cage, and his right hand, even if you're shelled, his right hand gets uncorked so effing hard that he's just stinging people, and he just throws the right. He's not even throwing the left. He's not parrying with the left hand. He's not hand fighting with his left hand. The second he backs you up to the cage, he's just unloading that right over and over and over again. Dustin rolled with a lot of shots. A couple shots landed clean. But that's how Dustin Poirier fights. The second he gets rolling and the second he has one bit of success, it just all goes downhill. He's like kind of similar to Max Holloway with his combination punching and his defensive skills, and his check right hook is what dropped Chandler there. Before the fight started, my fiance asked me, she goes, "What's Michael Chandler's best punch and what's Dustin Poirier's best punch?" I said, "It's Michael Chandler's straight right down the middle, and then it's Dustin Poirier's check right hand from the southpaw." And he has his hillbilly shell, his like hillbilly, I call it, it's not a Philly shell, it's a hillbilly shell because he's from Louisiana. And Dustin Poirier does not get flustered anymore. That's what won him this fight. He does not get broken. He is if you Google man, just the word man, Dustin Poirier has become a fucking man. Like that's just how he fights. Like he fights like a guy that's seen some shit. Like he is not easily flustered. He could lose a grappling exchange, a whole round, have it was looking like a Charles Oliveira fight all over again, man. So much success in the first, almost finished him. That elbow that he landed to finish the second, Chandler had to go down to a knee and he was gushing. You could see coagulated blood coming out of Chandler's face. Chandler was bad. He was like, yep. It looked like the Hooker and Poirier fight, but where Hooker almost had Poirier, but the role was reversed, and that elbow that Poirier landed was like one of the best clinch breaking elbows that I've seen off the cage in a really long time. It was fucking vicious. It was awesome.
Yeah, completely awesome. I mean, Dustin Poirier could also be found in the dictionary under the definition awesome. It's just
he's the shit. He's the shit.
He really is. Like if you're not a fan of the guy, at least in the cage, what are you even watching, or why are you watching it?
He's just I think I'm allowed to have a favorite fighter. I think he might be my favorite active fighter on the roster.
Poirier?
Yeah,
of course. Like why wouldn't he be? Name me the boring Dustin Poirier fight. I'll wait.
It doesn't exist. He is he's so battle tested too, man. He is like that final grappling exchange. How many people you can say in the chat where you thought Chandler had that high elevation takedown and you said it's over? How many people said it's over? Because a lot of people, the second that Chandler got in on his hips in that third round, I'm sure a ton of people thought it was over. And I looked at my chick and I go, this is Dustin Poirier.
Oh.
Like when I saw him take that rear naked choke and get the body triangle, the second he got the body triangle, I go, he's still a black belt. It was incredible. Like, who expected that? You know, I think he pieced up Chandler in the first round. I think it was pretty clear he won the first round. He hung tough in the beginning and then really got his success going. Second round, he got completely out wrestled and didn't take too much damage. The fish hooking is something we need to talk about. But then in the third round, he didn't break. And Dustin Poirier used to mentally break, but not anymore.
I'm with you all on all those points, and I think the mental breakage that you mentioned, or at least the bending and running out of ideas, may have been partially grounded in just being younger and not as battle tested, not as life experience, and also making the unnecessary cut to 145 that probably left him more tired and more damaged by the punches he had taken up to that point in a fight. I said on the preview, this card was kind of a showcase for people at lightweight that used to fight at featherweight and probably never should have. All three of them won decisively. That would be Poirier, Moicano, and Hooker. All three of those guys wasted years of their career just killing themselves to make one. And I don't say wasted. They were both very good, or they were all very good featherweights, but they're just such better fighters at 155.
And all of them were significantly larger than their opponents. Significantly. All of them.
Yeah. Which
is just Dan Hooker looks like a welterweight.
He's huge. He's huge.
he's huge.
Yeah.
His arms, he's got very long arms. He's got big traps. He's a very, he's big from the belly button up.
Yeah. It's from the belly button up. He's not the same size as him, but he reminds you of Jon Jones, his build. He's got long arms, but it's not like he doesn't have any muscle on his frame. He's just a big dude.
Yeah.
All those guys, I've been face to face with Dustin Poirier several times. He is 5'9". I'm 5'9", and he and I are just dead eye to eye, but there's a certain thickness to especially his upper body that doesn't come across on weight cut week, when he's on the scale after his water cut, because I've seen him in shape just in a t-shirt, and he looks like a middleweight. He looks like he weighs 190 195 pounds, not fat, just a fucking tank of a man. Anyway,
great fight though. Chandler,
great fight.
Chandler is a good grappler, but my fiance is also a big time Dustin Poirier fan, and she was getting nervous in a lot of those grappling exchanges, and I was like, the last person you watched do this to Dustin is a different level of grappler. Khabib, not really Charles Oliveira, who was just hanging all over him like that. That's Khabib. He's different. I was like, Dustin Poirier can hang tough here. People may ridicule his black belt, but you saw tonight, there's a reason why he has a black belt.
There is. His grappling has never been in question. It's just his defensive wrestling is so porous that he has often ended up on the ground in
spending too much time
already, and ending up there at the time and in the position of his opponent's choosing, not his own. Having said that, and here's one thing where, I'm sure Keith would sound off on this if he were here. Mel, by the way, I saw you ask. Keith is actually at Madison Square Garden. He's covering it live. Keith is in Boston. He decided to make the drive and go ahead and sit on press row for Sherdog. He took one for the team,
Good for him.
Good for him. But when he defended the first takedown attempt with a guillotine, I'm like, damn it, Dustin. It doesn't work on UFC level fighters. Stop doing it. You just concede the position. You give up the round. So on the finishing sequence where he did not just go to his back with a guillotine, like he got taken down, but as soon as his butt hit the ground, he kept moving. He denied the hook and basically just, he almost like pulled like an outside switch from like high school wrestling in the middle of the air. It
turned into him.
Stuff. Just, if he had more of the scramble at all costs mentality and less of the, oh shit, I'm getting taken down again, let's see if I can guillotine this guy mentality. Granted, this is me giving advice from my armchair to one of the 5 or 6 greatest lightweights of all time, but you can picture how other fights might have turned out a little differently for him.
Yeah, and just like he's too willing to concede the bottom position where he's like, fuck it, I can hang tough here and I'll just start back on my feet, in the next whatever, next round starts, or in a minute and a half. There's a minute and a half left in this round. I'll be fine, or maybe my striking, success was good enough. But he's always, and it also could be part of his hips. He's had like double hip replacement. Aren't both of his hips replaced? That could be another reason why he doesn't sprawl, why he is not, that could be a reason why he's not able to just have that hip dexterity and sprawl out. And maybe he also hits every single amateur scrub in ATT with a guillotine when they shoot on him. Probably does. Like, think about how many scrubs he probably just hits that guillotine on in the gym. So he's like, yeah, shit, I hit it on, so and so with a 3-0 amateur record. I squeeze his head off.
What do you do next with this man? He should be one of the happiest people in the world that the champ is neither Khabib Nurmagomedov nor Charles Oliveira, but the current champ is somebody that, for better or worse, is always going to be compared to Khabib, and the comparison is probably about 80 or 85% right, in my opinion.
The only difference is I don't believe Islam has the horsepower of Khabib, and I don't believe he's as durable. The way that the second round of the Islam and Oliveira fight went, they were striking a while. Dustin Poirier gets a fight like that with any lightweight on the planet, he can knock him dead. Everyone that's watching this knows that. But that deficiency is always there. And if Islam gets one takedown on you, his head and arm triangle is something that is, if you concede with both shoulders on the back, on the ground, and he gets side control, he's going to squeeze your head off.
Yep.
And, you have to favor someone like Islam in a fight like that. But again, if anybody strikes with Dustin Poirier at 155, he could put him out. As far as what's next, he's fought everyone.
He has fought everyone. He's
everyone.
He's fought everyone. At this point, it's not the UFC's job to find somebody to beat Islam Makhachev. It's the UFC's job, if I may for a moment tell them their job, it's their job to just find out who the next deserving person is, stick him in there and give them their chance. Like, even if Makhachev is a terrible style matchup for Poirier, even if he goes in there as like a 5-1 favorite or something, like none of that is on them, really. Like, if Poirier's earned it, he has. Having said that, I would love it if both he and Chandler took a little bit either of a step back or a lateral step, because we're getting to the point where there are a number of really, really good fighters working their way up this division. And if he goes and knocks out Beneil Dariush, that you just took a contender away. No. Well, because here's the thing. We already know now that Alexander Volkanovski is next. They announced that today. So we know who's fighting Makhachev next. The winner of that, whether it's Makhachev or Volkanovski, if the next challenger is not Beneil Dariush, we riot. And Keith, the law enforcement officer, is not here, so I just say no. Like the aging punk rocker says, no, we fucking riot. Like Dariush is long overdue. He has been beating good fighters, beating contender level fighters for years and years and years,
and doing it well. These aren't split decisions. This is not Carla Esparza's rise to title contention and holding the belt. I hate to say that, but this is like, look what he did to Gamrot.
Look what he did to Gamrot.
Gamrot's fucking legit, and everyone on the way, and everyone on the way there. You know, I think, I agree with you, man. If Benny doesn't get that shot, but they just made an interim title fight at 145. Yep. So does that mean the UFC feels like Volkanovski is fighting at 145 next, regardless? Because them making an interim title fight means that to me means that we have the second. We have number 2. And this is the next contender for Alexander Volkanovski. I feel like the UFC might think he's going to lose to just by making that fight.
I think they might think he's going to lose, but even if they thought he was going to win, and even if he does win, they can either just promote that interim champ to, like, they can have Volkanovski vacate if he wins and says, no, I want to defend this lightweight belt a couple times.
What do you do with Poirier? What do you do? What do you do?
You tell Poirier, look, the top is full of people that have beaten you already. You need to give somebody on their way up a chance. If you can stop the hype train of, say, a Rafael Fiziev, great. You know, that's enough to springboard you back into a title shot. Just, you know, we've got people like Fiziev and Sarukian and Ismagulov, assuming he continues to make weight, that they're stringing together long win streaks. And the UFC is just taking the chance that, you know, they just lose a silly fight somewhere and they knock off a perfectly good contender just because they're letting the same few airplanes just, you know, circle the airport forever. I think the same thing about Chandler. I think Chandler should fight someone like Gamrot next.
Yeah, I was thinking Gamrot or Sarukian. His hot sauce just became the hot sauce of the UFC. He's doing so much stuff outside the UFC. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't get a title fight, he might just say, fuck it, I'm going out on this massive win over Michael Chandler. And I would not be mad to see Dustin Poirier hang it up. I would be happy for him. If he hung him up, I'd be really happy because he's had a hell of a career, go out like this. And what else, just like you said, there's a, you know, what seems like, you know, just an immovable force at 155 as the champ. A guy that, you know, his protege is the guy that wrecked you.
Yep.
Like, what do you, and why would Dustin Poirier not, why would he fight one of those? You know what I mean? Like, and Masvidal, that's an option, but they're really good teammates and they're like really good friends. They've been teammates forever. Those guys aren't fighting. Too bad Nate Diaz is gone, man. Because that's a fight.
I think that's a probably pretty one-sided fight, but I'd be happy to see it. I'd be happy to see Poirier walk away.
Yeah, man.
You know, but I would rather see it now than when
go take a loss and then lose.
When 15 years of wars finally catch up with him, and he just goes off a cliff like Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
You know, Chris Wiz said we don't want to see what happened to Tony and his fight streak happened to Beneil. Sure, and we don't want to see what happened to Tony and his overall just, you know, competitive wherewithal happen to Dustin Poirier.
Yeah, so like a sinking ship.
Yeah.
That's on fire.
We have spent a clean hour talking about the top 3 fights in this card. Shall we pick it up a little bit?
Yes, sir.
All right. Before that, the legend, Frankie Edgar, future UFC Hall of Famer for whatever that's worth, gets his farewell fight in front of as close to a hometown crowd as he's probably ever was going to get. They give him Chris Gutierrez. a solid bantamweight, and he gets absolutely shellacked. It looks like the Corey Sandhagen fight where Edgar, and funny thing is, it was right as the UFC booth was pointing out that Edgar, he's always coming forward. Yes, he is always coming forward, and he's always feinting like level changes, and just his boxing style anyway is very compact, and he bounces up and down as he bounces in and out, and it's just tailor-made for the 2020s breed of gigantic bantamweights to just knee him right to the fucking face. And sure enough, that's what happened in front of a man's wife and kids. It's a bummer, dude. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't have any particular rooting interest going into a fight. I don't, I'm not much of an investor in MMA on the betting side. But if you don't like Frankie Edgar, then you're like somebody that doesn't like dogs. Like, I don't understand you. I may grudgingly have to work with you and deal with you, but I don't understand you, and I'll never really trust you if you don't like dogs.
Like, obviously hindsight's 2020, but like, this was never a good fight for Frankie. Like, this showed that this is the prime definition of the game catching up to somebody. He's just too small at bantamweight. He's even too small at bantamweight. I know it's crazy, but it's not wrong. He's too small. He's too small at 135, and his forward plotting, just like you said, he doesn't have he doesn't really have a pullback striking game, which is bad to do, but he doesn't have very good head movement. He's just kind of always moving up and down. He stays on a lateral line. He's moving straight in, and that shot looked like a shot that would hurt anybody. But Frankie doesn't get staggered anymore. Most people that take a shot, they get staggered, take a couple steps back and fall out. His brain is shutting off with any impact, where you could tell he got hit and it was like a light switch. And someone that's 41 with his career should not be taking shots like that.
Nope. No. The gold standard for that type of fighter is Chuck Liddell, where, in his prime, he always got hit a lot in his prime. Like, Vernon White, a welterweight, hit him a bunch of times. Like, everyone hit Chuck. Yeah. Just he shrugged it off. He hit him back harder, and they died. Yeah. But then tail end of his career, just everything just shut him off. Yeah. Just instantly dropped him like a marionette with cut strings. Alan McDonald points out it's kind of both, because him being too small is part of the sport passing him by. Yeah. Like, the bantamweights that have been beating him are substantially bigger than most of the featherweights that were beating him a few years ago, and some of the lightweights that he was fighting 12 years ago. It's both could be true.
Yeah, it's all in the same there. When he was at his peak, bantamweights were tiny. But just like you said, Chris Gutierrez is he's a very large guy. Cheeto, very large guy. All these guys are big dudes that could maybe go up to 145, but that's
Corey Sandhagen is bigger than anybody that Frankie Edgar fought at lightweight. He's bigger than Gray Maynard. He's bigger than Benson Henderson. Yeah,
comparable to the Zombie and Max Holloway.
Yeah,
and these guys are way more dynamic. Yes, nobody was timing jump knees like that on forward pressure. They didn't have the technical skill set to understand to even build a game to set something like that up. That's the difference. Nobody was crashing the pocket with a jump knee and flattening someone's head at that point.
No.
They weren't able, they didn't have a game plan, or there's just not enough MMA tape out there to build a game plan like that. But it's just so different now. And, what's to say, and he could fight again and somebody could just uppercut his head off. It's just there. He's there. You could build traps. You could build traps on Frankie Edgar and take his, and that's, every person that's finished him, it hasn't been a freak knockout. All of these were all set up with a trap. Corey Sandhagen's knee, Cheeto's teat kick up the middle, Chris Gutierrez's knee up the middle. Those are all strikes that were set up, with entrapment techniques. And it's just, that's how the game's caught up to you. You don't have the speed, you don't have the ability, you don't have the technical basis to even see these traps coming. And these younger guys do. They're just training it.
All right, last question on this one. It's a simple yes or no. And for everyone in the chat, simple yes or no question. 2 years from now, is this still Frankie Edgar's last MMA fight, or has he fought again in MMA since then? That's your question. While I get ready to set up our main card opener, of course, was gigantic former featherweight Dan Hooker against Claudio Puelles in a lightweight matchup. I had Puelles in this one. I felt pretty smart after about 5 minutes. I didn't feel so smart after about 9, as Dan Hooker gives out a little of the medicine that he received from Edson Barboza back in the day. Just kicks him right to the midsection. Everything shuts down. Puelles just looks like he's been hit by a tranq dart. Did you have Hooker in this one? Like, did you give it like serious thought on who you picked, or?
No, it's kind of all over Hooker here. I didn't think Puelles ever fought anyone on this caliber, and even though Hooker's been through a lot of battles, I didn't. Someone should tell him that he's not Ryan Hall. But you could tell after, in that moment where Hooker was just laying on his butt, he was sitting there like, what the fuck are you doing, man? He had him in a knee bar. He thought he was going to have it fully extended. They panned over to Claudio Puelles' face, and you could see he was just trying to rip his knee off. And the second that didn't work, the fight was over for him. He mentally broke in that fight. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to strike with Hooker. He was scared of Hooker. He was visually frightened of Dan Hooker. I don't know what Dan Hooker did to scare him so bad, but Claudio Puelles was scared shitless of Dan Hooker. He didn't want to fight him. He took that first teep to the body. And yeah, that sucks. But like, if you want to win a fight, you don't roll to your back. You get up and you try to win a fight. And even before that, everything I was touching him, that was one of the most desperate fights I've seen in MMA in a really long time. That's the way I could define Claudio Puelles' performance, was just desperate. He looked so fucking desperate.
And this was kind of his big shot at a name, like to go from prospect to contender. He gets, a former or contender, on the downslide who had lost a couple, and it did not go well for him. I have a question up on the screen from Alan McDonald. I need to make a confession, everybody. I had a wedding to go to today, one of my wife's friends. So I love Mexican weddings in Houston, though. Like, I got the mariachi band. The food was dope. I drank Modelo, which was brewed with a fighting spirit. But it meant that I got home and I had to blow through, everything up through this fight. Like, I caught up between this fight and the Edgar Gutierrez fight just by skipping all the interstitial bullshit,
nice.
All the commercials, which I love to do when I can. It compresses 8 hours of work into 4. But tell me about these chants. What happened?
I didn't hear any of these chants. I only watched the fight. When we're doing what we're doing right now, I will. The second I hear the fight start, I'm sitting in front. I'm watching the full fight. But that's when I'm running around my place making a sandwich. So I need to make sure I watch the fight. I did not hear any of the Puelles, but I also had I wasn't watching with volume for probably 40% of the card either. So I think this is one of the ones that I didn't hear. So someone please tell us.
Yeah, I got that in the chat. Let us know what the chants were. But it's a reminder, because I picked Puelles in this fight. I picked him by sub, and I overestimated how much Hooker had declined, if at all, or what kind of ceiling he had hit. And I underestimated what a step up this was. And on a night that I didn't do great with my picks, this is probably my worst pick. Like, this is a pick where I'm like, no, if they run this thing 5 times, it looks like this or similarly ugly every time. This is one where I just flat out got it wrong.
Yeah, but you shouldn't feel bad about it, because I feel like 50% of this fight was lost mentally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this wasn't, Puelles did not want to be in this fight. He looked fucking frightened. Like, he looked so scared after that first grappling transition off. He didn't get Hooker out of there, and he looked like it looked like a deer in headlights, where he was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I have no plan B.
Yikes. Prior to that, the top prelim was Renato Moicano versus Brad Riddell. Riddell kind of in a similar situation to his teammate Hooker coming into this fight. Riddell has now lost 3 in a row. Keith and I have both been pretty high on Riddell. My concern here is I picked Riddell to win this fight. I
Me too.
knew that Moicano had avenues to victory, but if you told me that one fighter won primarily by, I mean, it ended in a sub, but the big eye opener was how badly Moicano outstruck him.
Yeah.
I would not have picked that to happen. So that was an eye opener for sure. I have tended to kind of underestimate Moicano. I think.
Me too.
You know,
Me too.
I thought just an overcompensation because I thought he got overranked based on a pretty good early run in the UFC. But man, another guy where 155 is
he's huge
so,
too.
So easily his best division. Yeah, he's huge.
He looks big there. And you know what I think changed for him? And he said it tonight in his post-fight interview, and I promise you, Renato Moicano, I'm not going to fucking disrespect you anymore. It just looks like he doesn't give a fuck anymore. I think he knows that he is good enough everywhere where he just goes for it. And he showed that in the RDA fight. And did you catch his post-fight interview?
No, what did he say? I mean, I've got it queued up here in the Sherdog Slack, but
you got to watch it. He went crazy. He was screaming and cursing, saying, "You guys don't give me any effing respect. You call me on 4 days' notice. I was drinking beer and eating steak in Brazil, probably eating picanha, which is really fire."
Picanha's awesome.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. He was probably munching that down and having some. He said he was drinking beer, and I came and fought RDA, and he hung tough with RDA on 4 days' notice. You guys aren't giving me respect. He was like, I was one of the best featherweights. And if he keeps fighting like this with his, doesn't give a F attitude, his striking ability, his offensive striking and his defense, he's always had the BJJ pedigree. He's always been great there. His back take game is vicious, but his striking has come so far along, and his confidence. I think his confidence is the biggest growing point in his game.
These are all things that we could have said about the Bronx 2 years ago. And he went on to win UFC title.
Yeah, man. And Moicano, could be that next guy. It's very similar, and he's maybe not as fragile, durability wise. I also think there was 2 guys on this card, and Brad Riddell being one of them that has, not as bad as the other guy that we'll talk about in a little bit, but there's a couple guys on this card that have coming off of 3 pretty violent finish losses, and they're getting finished by lower level guys in an easier fashion. But I don't want to, say that Renato Moicano is lower level, but Fiziev, I have Fiziev on a very high level, and Brad Riddell went in there and hung with him, and then got finished, and then Jalen Turner just went and sparked him, and then Renato Moicano went in there, walked him down, sparked him a bunch of times, and then submitted him. He's losing worse and worse by guys that are further in the rankings.
No, I agreed. It's been a rough stretch for Riddell. Interested to see whether he regroups, how he regroups, or whether just his first 3 or 4 fights in the UFC end up having been a flash in the pan. Because he didn't seem like a flash in the pan. He wasn't like Houston Alexander that just came in and knocked out a bunch of people that weren't prepared for his game. Like Riddell came in like a composed striker from a good camp that came in well prepared. So he looked like a guy that was built for a certain amount of long-term success, and he's really hit a wall.
Especially the 2 camps. Tiger Muay Thai and City Kickboxing, like those 2 camps build like good fighters, and he also looked small, didn't he?
And he's never been a Titanic lightweight. Like everyone's smaller than Jalen Turner, but yeah, he was dwarfed by Moicano, but dude, that's just Moicano was deceptively.
He's big. He's a big dude, and Brad Riddell's best striking comes off the back foot. But he just never got it going. Like the way he looked against Drew Dober compared to tonight, like I would put Drew Dober on the same level as Venomous when it comes to striking as Moicano, and he hung in there with Dober and, went on to beat him. And he just had nothing for Moicano. So I don't know if that shows where, maybe it shows where they're both at. Is it a slight on Brad Riddell, or is it that Moicano is just really that freaking good?
Agreed. Somebody that I can speak, I feel a little more conclusively about than either of these guys is Dominic Reyes.
Me too.
Dominic Reyes came in against Ryan Spann. Fair play. Spann did miss the non-title limit by 0.6 of a pound. I'm someone who thinks that even fractional weight misses do matter.
Yeah.
It's not the 8 ounces of extra water. It's the not having to go do the extra work to burn it off 24 hours before you fight. But having said that, I don't think I think Spann putting on the trash bags and getting on the stationary bike for an hour would not have changed the outcome of this fight. Dominic Reyes, in the space of just under 3 years, has gone from arguably beating the best fighter on the planet to perhaps being cut by the UFC. I'll be waiting for that to see that news next week. We're gonna do the Ben and Dev cut list here in a little bit. Dude, what happened? Is this, and answer this as well in the chat, is this the most precipitous decline of a top-level fighter, say like a champ or a top contender, that you can remember in MMA history?
This is worse than Tony Ferguson and Tyron Woodley.
It's worse than Tony Ferguson and Tyron Woodley. Absolutely. Yes, because
it's violent. It's violent. This is not just like he is losing in the scrambling and getting his back taken and getting, rear naked choked. Like, these are violent finishes. And he, like, tonight, I want to go into my notes really quickly because I took a bunch of notes, and it was very weird that Reyes was just throwing these naked body kicks and just getting hit off of all of them. Like, he would throw a naked body kick, and then Spann would just time a 2 straight, a right down the pipe, and just club him with it. And he looked visibly uncomfortable with getting hit by power. He could never find his range. His footwork wasn't, Dominic Reyes usually has great head movement, great footwork, great reactions where he will, he used to be able to throw that body kick, bait the right hand out of you, slip the right hand, and then fire something behind it. Like, that's gone. Like, his vision's gone. His reaction to strikes being hit with strikes is gone. He's done. If you ask me, it's hard to, but like, he's getting finished so effing violently, man. Like, everyone that's beat him, it's been violent.
RC Kim, Hall of Fame MVP level reference right there. Here's the thing. On one hand, who's he really lost to? Okay, he arguably beat Jon Jones, again, the best fighter in the division, arguably the best fighter in the sport. He lost to Jan Blachowicz, who became champ. He lost to Jiri Prochazka, who became champ. And in the Prochazka fight, I mean, it was a wild back and forth first round. Like,
sure.
He got his licks in. He ended up getting murked, but and then Spann is slightly mercurial, but he is absolutely a top 10 talent. There are guys in the division that oh, good grief, yes. There are guys in this division he can beat. Like, 205 sucks. Dude, Harry Hunsucker dropped to 205. You don't think, like, Dominic... Don't answer that. Maybe... I'm just saying, there are people in the division that Dominic Reyes could probably beat, but at this point, you're like, is it worth the squeeze?
I didn't like the way he looked with any of his reactions, his vision. He had some of the best pullback counters that you would see, especially up at 205. Like, his head movement and his pullback counters were, his check hooks were so good, so clean. That was that step back, plant his feet and fire an uppercut. Like, all that seems to be gone. Like, he was just throwing naked body kicks, and his reaction timing was not fast enough to get out of the way of Brian Spann. And Brian Spann isn't a champion. He's not anywhere in my eyes. He's close to those guys, but he's nowhere near the level of Jan Blachowicz or Jiri Prochazka or either one of those guys. And to lose in that fashion against someone of that caliber, this is not a slight on Ryan Spann because he's good. He just knocked out, Dominic Reyes, but Reyes looked off in this fight. Like, he did not look good. He couldn't get out of the way of anything. He was throwing naked shots. I just can't get over those naked body kicks and then him just getting countered off of everyone he threw and then continuing to throw it.
Yeah.
Like, it was shocking. And then the jab hurt him, but that other right hand clubbing kind of clipped him towards the back of the head, behind the ear, unintentional. But that's what put him out. And then the final shot, that third shot from the sequence, where Ryan Spann crushed his head. He was, that was bad.
Yeah, Chris Wiz, suggests Gustafsson. I agree in the sense of there's probably something that snaps mentally when your high watermark of your career ends up being the night you almost beat like the best fighter in the world. Like, I mean, one of the charter members of my Hall of Fucking Awesome. If you don't read that column, why are you even listening to the show? Ian McCall. Ian McCall's high watermark is the night he got robbed, out of probably beating Demetrius Johnson. Like, he lost in the rematch because Johnson's a better fighter. That's what makes it really tragic. Yeah, Gus is a good comparison, but the thing is, Gus, even after that, hung on as a top 10 guy. I mean, he almost beat Daniel Cormier, a year or two later. Like, he stuck around as a top 10 fighter for a couple years after that, but...
And he wasn't dying. Gus wasn't dying,
Yeah, exactly. Like, Gus, I mean, except when he got pine boxed by Anthony Johnson, but that happens. All right, what's on your mind? It sounds like you got a question.
I do have a question for you. My question is this current state of Dominic Reyes a reflection of the game potentially catching up to Jon Jones as well?
I think the game was catching up to Jon Jones anyway. And that's no slight on Jones at all. I think Jon Jones is the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. It is incredibly difficult to stay at the top, no matter how great you are, no matter how impressive your physical gifts are, no matter how well planned your camps are, no matter how willing you are to cheat. Like, let's just throw it out there. No matter how willing you are to like do dirty shit, to be a champ at the UFC level is to have a huge target on your back. All the best fighters in the world, all the best camps, all the finest minds in the game, like their thought is on their next fight, but out of the corner of their eye, they're scheming ways to beat you. Like, everybody in the world is scouting you and looking for some gap in the armor. It's incredibly hard to stay at the top of the game like that. And, Jones basically also, he planted his flag at Jackson Wink. And so as the fortunes there declined and that place sort of started to come apart, I think that probably affected his preparation as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Jones left the sport on the back of two really close decisions to fighters that he arguably lost to. But you know what? Neither of those fighters has ever been the same. Jon Jones ruined those guys' lives.
Or was it the guy after Jon Jones? Because Dominic Reyes looked very, very confident going into that Jan Blachowicz fight.
It might be. I mean, but, then also, Thiago Santos, again, just...
Yeah.
I mean, Jon Jones literally wrecked him.
Like, his knees are... Yeah. He's in PFL. No, good for him. It's just weird to see such a close striking match that Jon Jones had with Reyes, where he was not able to get the takedowns that he attempted and did not have a ton of striking success in my eyes. He lost the fight. I would say probably 85% of the MMA community thinks he lost that fight, unless you had a Jon Jones ticket in your hand. And then to see what all these other guys are just doing, to his similar opponents, even Anthony Smith and stuff, like, it's just hard. Yeah, it's just a thought that came through my head. But yeah, Jon Jones is, he's Jon Jones. He's one of the greatest, and his accolades, they speak for themselves.
Before that, Aaron Blanchfield, Molly McCann. I was screaming. Keith was screaming. If you have Molly McCann, one of the biggest organically grown stars in your promotion over the last 2 years, and she is just she's a good fighter. She's good and limited. Why would you do anything with her but ride that train until it don't ride no more? Like, why would you do anything but put her in winnable fights in England? Why would you put her in Madison Square Garden in a terrible mismatch against a young woman from the tri-state area, unless you're trying to get Blanchfield over? Do you feel as though this was worth the squeeze? Blanchfield destroyed her.
Yeah, because this showed that the UFC doesn't care about Molly McCann, that they only care about Paddy Pimblett. And as long as they have one star in the UK, why not, build one that they feel like has a higher ceiling? Anyone that knows this sport, that watches this sport like we do, knew Blanchfield is probably just going to win this fight the same way it looked. And just like you said, Blanchfield's 23. The UFC knows what they've got with Molly, and they know they can put her back on the Paddy card. They know she's not going to be a title challenger. They know that. But Blanchfield's looking like someone that could be a title challenger.
I would agree with you. Blanchfield, she's even a year or two younger than, Macy Barber and Miranda Maverick.
23.
23.
And way better.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I wasn't sure I ever really bought Macy Barber as, sorry, pun fully intended, the future of the division. And I know that's easy to say now, but even at the time I was like, she's running on just physicality and aggression. That's not going to last. Yeah. But Blanchfield has legit skills. I think she and Casey O'Neill are the future of that division. And I mean, she did what you're supposed to do to McCann. I mean, Alan puts out that terrible booking. I mean, it was a terrible mismatch, but
if you're a Molly fan, yeah.
And McCann, she had won 3 in a row. She gotten 2 finishes. You got to book her against somebody. But stylistically, yeah, this was bad news. My problem is, I guess, Blanchfield. Do we think Blanchfield learned much? And did we learn much about Blanchfield? No, she did exactly what we expected. No. I want something more interesting for Erin Blanchfield next, for sure.
It was a blatant stepping stone fight. It was a blatant use any fan base or any sort of, hype that Molly has behind her, and, just pass that over to Blanchfield. Because, again, I do feel like the UFC has, if you're buying stock in Molly McCann or Erin Blanchfield, you're pushing all your chips toward Erin Blanchfield. You're not going Molly. And I think the UFC realized that. And then Miranda Maverick's probably not going to listen to this podcast, but she should probably also stop calling out Molly McCann. Because she called her out again after this fight and posted on her social media. And I was just like,
hopefully Carla Esparza isn't listening to this one again. Carla let us have it last week, but we were right.
Well, I don't work for Sherdog. I'm a guest.
Before that, middleweight matchup: Andre Petroski, Wellington Turman. No real controversy about the result. Question I would have for you is, how much upside does Petroski have? He's not super young for how relatively green he is as a mixed martial artist. Like if either of these guys theoretically had more upside, you would think it'd be Turman, who's like 5 years younger. Petroski, he's a good amateur wrestler. He's only got 10 pro MMA fights. I mean, it's a wide open division. You mentioned how bad it is. Is he fighting top 10 fighters middle of next year?
I don't think so.
You think he's probably going to hit a ceiling?
Yeah, I think we're seeing him just a tad bit under his ceiling. I think anybody that's just like one step up, may beat him, like a Jacob Malkoun or something, could give him a hard fight, but at the same time, he one thing I do want to say that I'll give him credit for is it looks like he's definitely fixed his gas tank. On the Ultimate Fighter, where he lost to Brian Battle via ninja choke, he just gassed out bad in that fight. He looks like he's got his gas tank. He's confident. He called out Bo Nickel. Good for him. That's probably not going to happen. And quite honestly, he probably doesn't want it to. Like, why? Because anyway, but he's shown too that he could face adversity and still come back and not be broken, which is good. He lost that. He one of the judges gave Wellington that second round. I thought it could have gone either way, and then he came back and clearly won the third round. It's also Wellington Thurman. I think he does deserve a step up. And I think maybe around like Jacob Malkoun would be fun, someone like that.
And you think even like the say like the Bruno Silvas or Anthony Hernandez of the world are probably a step too far.
Yeah, but like Marc-Andre Barriault would be a good fight for him.
Yeah, I like that too. Like, I didn't think we necessarily needed to talk specific matchmaking, but I just kind of wondered,
just that type of guy.
Yeah, what shelf are you? What shelf are you grabbing the next bottle from?
He's not up. He's not at Fluffy. He's not there yet, but I think he's right around like, but Marc-Andre Barriault. Those guys around there. Jacob Malkoun. I see those guys similar level. Maybe Marc-Andre Barriault a step up, but I think that's the kind of area that he needs to be looking into. But he seems confident. He's at Daniel Grace. He's at a good camp, Yep. And he's winning. He's not losing.
Now he's like, whew, I'm not the first one to lose from the Daniel Gracie camp on this huge streak. So, whew. Before that, Otman Azatar fighting for the first time in like 2.5, almost 3 years since what do we even call it?
Potato Gate
fight. Potato Gate, the stupidest thing. And I mean, I picked Azatar in this one. I picked him huge.
I did too.
20 months ago when they were supposed to fight, just based on the fact that Frivola wasn't as good as the streak he was heading into that fight on. Azatar was a hot property at the time. I thought if Azatar is anything like he was in late 2019, he's got this, because Frivola had just turned into sort of a straightforward slugger that was actually at his best when he decided to wrestle. Like the win over Jalen Turner, where he just wrestled the crap out of him, has aged incredibly well. But guess what? Frivola lit him up.
I knew Azatar was going to lose this fight when I saw him have an extremely over-dyed beard that was dyed jet black. Like, he dyed his beard, and then his hair cut. Like, dude, just go bald, bro. I'm bald. Like I got no hair. I shave my head. Go bald, bro. But he looked old.
Or just be gray.
Yeah.
Be old. But no, he looked like he was, getting ready to join a System of a Down tribute band. He looked like a whole kind of mess.
And he fought like shit. Like he didn't look good. His timing was off. He just didn't look good.
Hadn't fought in 3 years.
Yeah. We just had a guy like that last week. Look what Mario Bautista did to Lopez. Like, those are like. Not everyone is Dominic Cruz. This is real. Like, I don't know, but he doesn't look like he did. Like, Azatar looked like he didn't do any hard sparring. He looked like he thought he was going to come in here and hit him in the head with a hammer, and the fight was going to be over.
Yeah, pretty much. Alan McDonald, he looked old, but he's only 32. He might be lying about that. We're not dead sure. He might cut age. It's happened before.
He looked so bad.
he looked absolutely terrible. So Karolina Kowalkiewicz picked up another win. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, age 37. The UFC flyweight division being what it is, there are still fighters in the division that she can beat. She beat 37-year-old Silvana Gomez Juarez. Do you have anything to say about this fight?
The freaking scorecards at the end, that looked super fishy. That looked super freaking shady, that they brought them into the cage and then they went and brought them back to the judges' table, and Bruce Buffer was writing on the scorecards with a black marker. Like, that whole thing was freaking weird, and I'd be pissed if I was Silvana Gomez Juarez.
I saw everybody saying, there's some sort of weird fix or scam going on, but then they announced the win, and I was like, well, it looks like the right person won. Like, what happened?
I don't know. If somebody knows, please let us know, because I just saw stuff that, after all the scandals that have been going out regarding sports betting, and I feel like tonight I saw more sports betting promotion from the UFC than I have ever. And then you see that shit. It's just, if it quacks like a duck, that's all I got to say.
And I mean, it's several times in the last month that the UFC has pushed patently shady stuff, or allowed patently shady stuff to be pushed into the octagon. I mean, just the Dillashaw fight, the Derek Minner fight, especially because Minner is coached by a guy who, until they stopped him, proudly bet on UFC fights. I mean, James Krause might as well be on the poster for the UFC's new policy. I have the feeling we're going to have some sort of ugly scandal happen sometime in the next year or so.
Why? Gomez Juarez didn't look upset. Like when you see that going on and there's a split decision, even if you think you lost the fight, like if you gave a shit, like you would be upset. You just fought your ass off. You had an 8-week training camp. You're traveled to Madison Square Garden. You trained out of Mexico. Like you're crossing international borders. And she just like smiled and shrugged it off. Like that's also a weird reaction to losing a really close fight.
Maybe just
like
she's like the rest of us. Like nobody can stay mad at Karolina Kowalkiewicz because she's like so freaking adorable. I have no idea.
It's just just weird. After the whole thing and then her not being upset about it, I don't like the way it looked.
Yeah. Before that, Mike Trizano. I proclaimed doom on Mike Trizano on the Sherdog preview. I said on up the card, we're full of fighters that made the wise choice to move up from featherweight to lightweight and are better for it. And I said Trizano as a gigantic featherweight that looks physically drained on the scale, looks drained in the cage, and just never really seems to get out of second gear even when he wins. I don't know if he was listening, but he was like, I meet you halfway. How about I fight really well, but I miss weight? Busted up Sung Woo Choi, gave a glimpse of what he's capable of. I mean, it's his best performance to date, like best career performance to date.
The first sentence I wrote in my notes is double knockdown. Trizano actually looks like he's interested in fighting.
I mean, looks interested in fighting, and
he looked like he wanted to fight and win.
And after a double knockdown, was able to get up quickly enough that he wasn't the guy that ended up getting pounded out. Yeah.
And they both had similar success. Trizano just, had a little bit more. They both took advantage of each other,
Yep.
And this was actually a great fight because neither one of them really showed any deficiencies. It was just, they showed their level and they showed their countering abilities. It was because they're both crushing each other with counter punches. Like, everybody, these were all not 3 or 4 punch combinations that, the person was getting stung with the third shot. These are all really beautiful counter punches. Both of these guys had so much success with the counter punching, but Trizano just, was a little bit more in the groove, man. And that round 1 still may be better than round 1. Poirier and Chandler had more on the line because those are big names. Yeah. But like this fight was absolutely nuts.
It was a wild fight. One of the more enjoyable 1-round fights I can remember. Like it's up there with Diaz Daly and even like OSP Tyson Pedro, where it was just like 3.5 minutes of wild scrambling. Just a whole lot of fun. Exactly the kind of thing you want in one of the first couple fights up at a huge pay-per-view. Before that, bantamweights Julio Arce and Montel Jackson. Jackson living up to his name or his nickname. He is one quick individual.
I feel like he could have done so much more in this fight.
In what way? What did Jim?
Arce only had they read out a stat, and this was like halfway through the third round where he had like 21% striking accuracy.
Ooh.
Like it was bad. And there was still time where, Montel Jackson actually turned up the volume. When he turned up the volume, every time he let his hands go, he was touching Arce, and Arce could not touch him. Probably the worst fight on the card, though.
Which, not too shameful a thing to say on a card that I'm going to ask you in about 8 minutes here whether it was your card of the year. But yeah, like it was just a fight.
Yeah. He won, he made weight, and he got his win money. Good for him.
There you go. Before that, we witnessed the last time that Carlos Ulberg will ever open a UFC card. I called this one. It wasn't that hard to call. I don't know why the odds were as close as they were. It was Carlos Ulberg against one of the fighters most guaranteed to give him the fight he needs in order to shine. Ulberg is not a complete fighter. I mean, we just finished the Alex Pereira show. You can get pretty far as an incomplete fighter in the UFC if you knock people out and the UFC is willing to give you a little bit of a push. dude, I mean, he looks like a sleek Dwayne Johnson. Like, he's like this, like, devilishly.
He sure as shit does. He sure as shit does.
Yeah, I've said this
He really
on our
does.
previews. He looks like a villain from a 90s kickboxing movie. Like, just this, like, arrogant, like, handsome dude that, is just like, yeah, just devilish fellow. Plastered Negamariano. He's not that old. He had a kickboxing career, but not one of those 150 bout kickboxing careers that have a dude washed before, he ever transitions. He's in a wide open division.
Yeah, man.
Like, do you see possible upside here, or is he just along for the ride as kind of an Adesanya homie?
Well, being an Adesanya homie definitely is good for him. Nothing wrong with that. That's benefited him clearly. It's clearly got him some favorable matchups. Clearly the UFC likes him. Clearly the UFC wants to see him win fights based off the matchmaking. It's similar to Cyril Gane's, pre-UFC career,
Sure.
Not as dynamic and not as good. Also, Cyril Gane's at heavyweight and he's a freak athlete, but you could tell that this was the game plan for this fight. They knew Negamariano was just going to press forward and rely on his chin. They knew he did not have the ability to cut off the octagon. They knew if they took his legs from under him, it would force him to crash the pocket even harder and get more desperate. And all it took was Olberg to land, I think it was like 3 or 4 good calf kicks. And then Negamariano said, well, I can't stay on the outside and take these anymore. I need to go crash the pocket. Second he did that, he got caught with a counter check hook right over the top. And tonight was the night of check hooks. Like, a lot of damage was done via check hooks tonight, in a lot of these fights, and that's all that it took for Negamariano. And he got face planted. The commentary even clowned him a little bit. Daniel Cormier was even like, he giggled and he goes, "I'm not going to say what he looks like," or something along those lines. Yeah, I was a little bit shocked to hear that, but Olberg looks good. Give him another low level guy, just give him another guy at 205 and see how he does. He's let him go again.
Give him one that will probably at least try to take him down. Would be interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
it's what we need to know sooner or later. Like, I'm not saying, throw him in there with, Iwan Kudalaba or like a top 15 guy that's a hoss, but, someone who can wrestle, Well, that's it, man. Top to bottom, 14 fights. We talked about what's good, what's bad, what's surprising, and what's controversial. Let's get to the good stuff, man. First up, not the Shillen and Duffy, but the Duffy and Vasquez cut list. These are the fighters that we are giving the UFC permission to cut. It sounds like a bad thing. It is a bad thing for the fighters in question, but it's the only way we get new blood in here. The puppy mill that is the Contender Series, now sends us like 50 fighters a year. So somebody's got to go, usually. Do you have anyone that you would cut this week?
I was thinking about Reyes, but I think Reyes can get another fight. Just give him one more shot since he climbed to the top of the hill. Give him one more shot. Not even the hill. He climbed to the top of the mountain. He fought Jon Jones. Give him one more shot. Give him someone very low level. Don't give him Olberg. Give him someone like Negamariano. Don't give him someone like Tyson Pedro. Just give him one more shot. But I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC let go of Gomez Juarez.
She's the only one that is on my cut list. I'm with you. Give Reyes another fight. Give the guy a little bit of respect. Give him a winnable fight, even if it's one just to walk away on.
Yeah.
But Gomez Juarez, she's 37. She's 1-3 in the UFC, and the one win is over Liang Na, who was 0-2 in the UFC. So Juarez has no wins over anybody with any wins in the UFC. It'd be one thing if she was 22 and showing some spark of life, but no, she just lost a straightforward fight to Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who should have been retired for 4 years by now.
Yeah.
Bulls and Bears, ye old stock market. Things that are on their way up are bulls. Things that are on the way down are bears. Do you want to do bulls or bears first? And do you want me to go first, or would you like to go first? Hey, Keith Shillen. Everyone's been asking where you are. Cut Stan the Man, who's the guy at the post-fight interview. I I will watch Dana's interview after this.
I will. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
I'd like to do the Bears, and I'd like to go first. And then you can do the Bulls and go first. Number one Bear is guys that missed weight and had freaking amazing performances. Trizano, Span, weight misses, great performances, losing money. Number two
Probably
Bear.
left some money on the table, those guys.
Yeah. Number two Bear. Bad haircuts. Weili's, you said it. Weili Zhang looked like she had about 4 different haircuts tonight. Michael Chandler had a terrible fade. And then Ottman Zaitar is the leader of this group with his extremely thinning hair and then his dyed beard that looked like Andrei Arlovsky but cut down a little bit shorter, like my length, but very dark. And then my third Bear, Izzy, losing 3 times to this guy, 2 times by knockout, and was on his way to potentially winning or at least a close fight. And it's just going to be tough to come back. It's going to be tough to come back after this, losing to this guy 3 times. At the end of the day, regardless of the sport, I know it's only one in MMA, but he's lost 3 times. And he lost 3 times doing what he does. He had to do something else, and he still lost. He had to wrestle, and he still got knocked out.
Yeah, I agree with all those. So rather than add 3 full ones of my own, I will just toss in City Kickboxing in general. I mean, they went 2-2 on the night, which on the face of it, that's not that bad. But when that 2-2 is coming from arguably the top gym, or what is regarded as the top gym in the entire sport right now, and it includes a just crushing loss by your best fighter, your superstar, your champion, it's hard to call that a great night at the office. Yeah. So they'll be back, but not a great night for City Kickboxing. And I will just grab this one from 30C West. If there's one thing you know about the UFC right now, it is that they really want you to bet on their product. When Anik is on the stick, he tells you the odds before every fight. He tells you the live odds in between each round. He tells you like prop bets because he is a complete degenerate. So for DraftKings to stop working during the card, that's a big problem.
Yeah, but I bet it stopped working around the Gomez Juarez fight.
Ooh, see? Yeah, that's all I'll add to that. For Bulls, Bull, Renato Moicano. Again, I've harped on it all night. Several fighters on this card, 155 is their best home, 145 probably, just they wasted time there. But not only is he just more comfortable, obviously, in his body at 155, he is adding new wrinkles to his game. He's becoming a more complete fighter. He's adding confidence. All of that sounds a lot to me like Charles de Bronx Oliveira, like once he committed to 155 for good. I'm not saying that Moicano's career arc will take him to quite those heights, but he's in a much better place than he was just a couple years ago. It's a good thing to see. Bull. Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Again, like you were on a miserable losing streak and you never officially retired, but everyone just kind of assumed you retired. She's come back and I mean, she's not set the world on fire, but she's won 2 fights in a row, even if both women are probably going to be cut immediately afterwards. Now retire for good. Retire on top. Do it. Ryan Spann. Yeah, it is a little bit tarnished by the fact that he missed weight. Probably missed a $50,000 check. That's a damn shame. It's an ongoing issue at Fortis. They got dudes that miss weight. There was the year that Abdul Razak Al Hassan lost literally $100,000 in bonuses because he missed weight 2 fights in a row that one fight of the night. But having said that, for a guy that's never really broken through just because he's a little too inconsistent, he's alternated wins and losses, even if one of the losses was bunk. Here he got a win over at least the biggest name, if not the best fighter he's fought so far, and looked absolutely brutal doing it. And man, who else but Alex Pereira? I don't normally name main event fighters because they're the most obvious winners and losers on the night, but I didn't give him much of a chance, and I was dead wrong. I am happy to eat all the crow over that. And for what it's worth, I am more excited for the UFC's options now that he won this fight rather than losing. So I guess it's kind of a bull stock night for the UFC as well. What do you got?
Yeah, it seemed like the promotion of this fight, all of the pre-fight promos, kind of felt like the UFC might have wanted Alex to win this fight. I feel like that might have opened up the division for them a little bit, and kind of get the ball rolling. And I feel there's definitely more action at middleweight now that he's a champ. So definitely I agree with you on Alex Pereira. My bulls are, I'm going to go with American Top Team, Moicano and Dustin Poirier, both having really good performances, great fights. And then I'll say Zhang Weili. She got her belt back, as we all expected. And now she set up a fight that we all want to watch. And, that's going to be she's going to be on another co-main event, on another big card, and it'll probably be April or May of next year.
Beautiful stuff. I mean, answer me this, you and everyone in the chat. What's your letter grade for the card? And assuming that you're probably going to give this card an A or an A+, where does it fall among your best events of the year?
I mean, this is a damn good card. We shit on a lot of cards, all of us,
Sure.
We do. And this is not one to scoff at. This is a damn good card. I mean, surprised my neighbors didn't call the cops. I screamed my ass off. I'll give it an A. This is an A card, man. We saw the title change. We saw 2 titles change hands. We saw an amazing fight with Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. There was a lot of great performances. I'm curious to see how these bonuses went.
Yeah, let me see here. I should be able to call that up.
So many first-round finishes. What was the end result on first-round finishes?
There were 8 first-round finishes.
It's more than 50%.
All right. Yeah, there was one fight of the night, which was the most obvious fight of the night call, in several months, Poirier and Chandler.
Yeah.
And
Good for them.
Pereira and Zhang both got performance bonuses. So I don't love it when the top fighters on the card get the performance bonuses just because it's the fighters down the card for whom that is life-changing money, but you can't argue these. It's, Keith, slightly biased because when you're there, the energy, it hits a little different, but I'm not arguing this one.
This is a
279, 280, and 281 have all been pretty damn good, but this one there was only one fight that was even mediocre. The rest were all either sensational or over really fucking fast. And we got a shocking, but not especially controversial outcome in the main event. And after 4 main events so far this year ending in freakish injury,
Gosh.
Well, when Izzy started limping in the 4th round after checking that kick, I was like, if we are off to another injury spurred, I'm throwing something out the window, but no. All right. I mean, that's it. The Shillen and Duffy recap for UFC 281, Adesanya versus Pereira. Thank you so much, Devin. Dev Goes Fishing, for stepping in and picking up the slack for Keith, who's he's off in New York doing something. I don't know what, but as of right now, it is Saturday night, probably early Sunday morning where most of you are. Look for the Shillen and Duffy, and that will be Keith and me, preview for UFC Vegas 65, Lewis versus Spivak. That'll be live first thing Monday morning. Between now and then, thank you guys so much for hanging out. This has been a really, really fun chat, and we are out of here, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Shout out to Sherdog. You guys always kill it. You and Keith are always crushing it. Shout out to anyone that listened and tuned into the chat. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much, man.